President Trump takes over. The president ordering the military to take over law enforcement in Washington, D.C. Trump saying 800 National Guard troops will be stationed in Washington and even more if necessary. Today, he painted a brutal picture of crime in the district.
It's becoming a situation of complete and total lawlessness. They fight back until you knock the hell out of them, because it's the only language they understand. It's a disgusting thing.
Keep that in mind, and then remember what the president said about January 6th, calling it, quote, very minor incidents. That's what he called the attack on the U.S. Capitol against law enforcement. At least 140 officers were injured. 5 officers died after the insurrection on the Capitol. And then the president pardoned his supporters. Now he's saying D.C. officers should, quote, fight back and knock the hell out of perpetrators. It's also worth noting that violent crime in Washington is actually falling dramatically. After a spike immediately following the pandemic, the violent crime rate in D.C. has been steadily going down ever since. Even one violent crime is too many, of course, but the rate is now at a 30-year low. So why Trump is claiming this is an emergency now? History. But we do know that the president has made a centerpiece of his presidency, and before that, his campaign, claims about violence in American cities, particularly Democratic ones.
The murder rate in Democrat-run cities like Chicago, Baltimore, New York, so many others, is higher than in Afghanistan.
You see the crime wave. Even without this, you see all in Democrat-run cities. Our country is now a cesspool of crime.
Just months ago, Trump sent thousands of troops into Los Angeles to quell small immigration protests. That move is still being challenged in court. The governor of California said the troops were not necessary and instead were, quote, props in the federal government's propaganda machine. Kristen Holmes is out front at the White House for us tonight. Kristen, I know you've been talking to your sources there about all of this. What's Trump's plan now to actually get this done?
Well, remember, Kate, it's not just Trump's plan. Now he actually has to work with Mayor Bowser, with the police chief here. They all have to work together to make this work. And it doesn't sound like they have any idea of what that's going to look like. There has been a behind-the-scenes scramble, particularly on the side of the city of D.C. The mayor, the police chief, all learned in real time as President Trump was announcing it that he was going to take over the D.C. Police Department. Now there are questions as to how exactly that's going to work. We heard Mayor Bowser at one point talking about how she essentially left a message for the Attorney General, Pam Bondi. She was told that that's who is in charge of all of this. At one point, we know that President Trump said that both Pam Bondi was going to be in charge of the police, but also the new DEA administrator, who has just been named Terry Cole, is also going to be an interim head of the police. So right now they are sorting through all of this, and there's still a lot of questions. I mean, one thing that was so interesting was that there was some outreach from the White House to Bowser's team, telling them that they were going to deploy the National Guard, but they didn't tell them the full scope of what it was that they wanted to do. Now, President Trump had started this process on Thursday of last week, increasing federal law enforcement, and today was really the culmination of all of that. Now, there are other questions as to what this means going forward, not just for the city of D.C., but really across the country. You heard President Trump almost point blank saying that he was going to look at this as a model of something that he could do in potentially New York or Chicago. Now, of course, it's going to be a lot harder to do in cities like New York and Chicago. There is kind of a gray area when it comes to D.C., and you heard Bowser acknowledge that today. Because it's not a state, there is a lot more that the federal government can do. But I can guarantee you right now that because I've talked to a number of Democrats who have said that behind the scenes they're quietly conceding that there's not really much you can do in Washington, D.C., they're already looking at what they can do in other big cities if this is to expand.
Kristen Holmes, it's good to see you. Thank you so much. Up front with us now, Democratic Senator Paul Strauss. He represents the District of Columbia in the U.S. Senate. Senator, thank you very much. President Trump, so he's placing the D.C. police under federal control, deploying the National Guard, not ruling out even putting active duty troops in your city, in the district. What do you say?
This is all a terrible idea. Crime has been falling, as you've pointed out, and what this is going to do is create a sense of distrust between the local community that depends on and works with the police, and it's going to make people less willing to cooperate with investigations, less willing to testify. And he's also targeting some of our most vulnerable citizens, the homeless, immigrants. We want these people to be able to come forward if they see evidence of a crime. So things have been going well. In fact, the only problem we've had has been in the federal government's area of crime. Right now, President Trump has the authority to appoint all the judges. He appoints the prosecutor, unlike in the 50 states. And we could have had a partnership where we were improving the federal role, but instead, he's sending troops into the streets to declare war on our own people. It's just disgraceful.
So there's the data that we laid out, the crime stats, but there's also, when it comes especially to how you feel in your community, there's also perception. And a recent Washington Post poll found that 58% of D.C. residents think that the mayor is not doing a good job in reducing crime. Only 38% saying she's doing either an excellent or a good job. Also, there were bad numbers on how they felt she was doing when it came to homelessness. If that's how people feel, is there an argument to be made to give Trump the 30 days and see if he can do better?
Not the way he's proposing it. He is not working constructively with our law enforcement partners. What he's going to do is drive a wedge between the people who are here to supposedly protect and serve us and the communities that they're trying to work with. Crime has been coming down. Is it low where we want it? No. One crime is too many? Absolutely. And violent crime is particularly egregious. Nobody wants that. But it takes a cooperative spirit between a community and a police. We want cops to be cops, just as he said, but he's going to take National Guard soldiers, other federal troops. I have nothing but respect for the women and men who wear the uniform of our country. But they have important things to be doing instead of hanging around D.C. street corners that they don't know. They're not trained law enforcement professionals. And the problem is not that the police aren't making arrests. The problem is we have a high judicial vacancy rate, but that's the president's fault. He's the one who gets to appoint the judges. His last appointed attorney general fired 60 career prosecutors. We need them to be working to put the people who the police arrest and hold them accountable. This high vacancy on the federal side is what's causing the problems. It's not the D.C. police. They've been doing a good job. Could they do better? Of course. We always want to see crime come down more, but his plan is not going to make that happen. It's a way to blame Democrats for a problem that is not our fault.
But Senator,
DC
then square it with this. The D.C. Police Union put out a statement saying that it supports the president's takeover, saying that it is necessary to address, quote, violent crime surges, historic officer shortages, and eroded morale. What's your response to that?
One of the reasons right now that we have officer shortages is because the Republican-controlled House of Representatives has refused to pass the appropriations bill that would restore over $1 billion in funding to the D.C. police and to the D.C. local government. Literally, it was House Republicans that voted to defund police by withholding this money, when in fact they accuse Democrats of trying to do that. That's not what we want to do. We want our police out there. It would be great if we had real law enforcement resources that were coming in addition to our local police. But nobody believes that's what's happening. We see this as a distraction that Trump is trying to use to take attention away from other legal problems he may be having. This is not the way to do it. We would love to be good partners with our federal government. They have, because we're not a state, a role in our criminal justice system that is unprecedented. It doesn't take place anywhere else. We want the right to elect our own prosecutor. We want the right to appoint our own judges. Frankly, we want all the rights that come from being a state. And this shows really why D.C. statehood is a necessity, not just for political equality, but to protect our public safety.
Well, in the very short term, let's also see what the measure is that the president will set out for what progress is if the crime rate is already falling. Senator, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Kate.
Out front with me now, Ryan Goodman, former special counsel at the Defense Department, and former Congressman Adam Kinzinger. Congressman, why do you think Trump is doing this now?
There's one reason. There's a minor reason and a major reason. The major reason is very simple. Epstein. There's the reason right now. This is an attempt to get us going after the shiny red ball He's trying to distract from Epstein. He could release the Epstein files literally right now. And so that's what I think's going on. And look, there was a mugging of somebody, or the kid that worked for him
Yeah, the
got
attempted
beat up, and
carjacking, and
certainly
he was
crime.
assaulted.
Yeah, and certainly crime in DC is bad as it is in a lot of major cities. It's gotten so much better. But this is also an attempt to just simply make himself look bigger and tougher and stronger than he really is. This is not, a federal invasion of Washington, D.C. They can only take over the police department for 30 days without Congress getting involved. And he already has control over the D.C. National Guard. And so that's what this is. But he's trying to puff up his chest and make himself look. And I got to make one real quick point. One of Donald Trump's biggest things he said about January 6th was that Nancy Pelosi and the mayor never deployed the National Guard. Donald Trump is proving right now he is actually the commander-in-chief of the D.C. National Guard. So that blows that argument out of the water.